Once again, Christian greetings to all our valued listeners and viewers throughout the whole world, more particularly to all Shepherd's Rod believers, and most especially to our beloved brothers and sisters in the United States of America. Special greetings to our brethren in Colorado, to our brethren in Georgia, our brethren in Kansas, in Fiji Island, in Mexico, Spain, Africa, to the United Kingdom, and also your brethren in Australia. And to the rest of the 144,000 living saints scattered abroad, greetings. May the good Lord bless you, brothers and sisters. This is our episode number 10 on the subject, the chronological order of events. And we give more attention to that predicted event before the last and the final Day of Atonement, which is the blotting out of names, as well as the events that will occur between the blotting out of names among the congregation of the living and the blotting out of sins of the 144,000 living saints. And we already read in 1SR Packet Edition on page 56 that God revealed the wondrous structure of the plan of redemption. All the methods known to mankind was employed by God. And it was enumerated one by one in 1SR Packet Edition, page 37, how the Bible reveals its tremendous truths in diverse ways. First, in numerics; second, symbols; third, figures; fourth, parables; fifth, allegories; sixth, dreams; seven, visions; 8 types, and the 9th by providences. And we would like to connect these 9 chosen mediums employed by God to unfold the wondrous structure of redemption. And absolutely, all of them are in perfect harmony, in absolute agreement. Now, first we focus our attention to the parables of Jesus Christ, and even more pertaining to the parable in Matthew 20. The 5 distinct calls. And that parable in Matthew 20, accordingly, is connected to the symbolization of Revelation 6, verse 6, according to 2SR 225 and 226, saying, with the previous explanation of Revelation 6, verse 6, a measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. We shall endeavor to prove that the symbols point back to the parable of the householder, and Jesus allegorically looked forward to John's vision. If the explanation perfectly fits the parable and the vision, in harmony with God's book and law, and a present lesson is derived therefrom, then only must we accept it as truth. So, if such explanation perfectly fits the parable in Matthew 20 and the vision of John in Revelation 6, verse 6, and in harmony with the entire Bible, and in accordance with the law of God, and also a present truth lesson is derived, then we need to humbly admit and accept it as a message of God from heaven. Now, this reading, we can easily understand that it is impossible that we could be able to grasp the true meaning or the particular object in view in the parable of Matthew 20 unless it must be connected to the symbols in Revelation 6, verse 6. Now, and we know that the book of Revelation was not written not until in 98 AD, from 96 AD to 98 AD. Obviously, therefore, the parable of Matthew 20 was not given by God to the previous generation prior to the time when the book of Revelation is in existence. Now, let us read again 2SR page 237, saying, reason why 3 hours to a movement. I would like to read the first sentence, saying, the following fact further proves that the church history in this instance is represented by a 24-hour clock dial. And then it says, the reason he has followed that particular rule is to present to his church the exact time of her history by periods. So, the main objective why Jesus Christ followed or employed such particular rule, 3 hours schedule, is to present to His church the exact time of her history by periods. And of course, logically, it could not be the church prior to the time when the book of Revelation did not as yet in existence. So reading again in 2SR 234, why only 2 kinds of cereals brought to view? It is pointing Revelation 6, verse 6. And sometimes we need to ask question to ourselves, why is it that in the 22 chapters in the book of Revelation, Jesus Christ connects the parable in Matthew 20 on Revelation 6, verse 6. Although we explain it several times that in reality, Revelation 6, verse 6 indicates the entire Bible. Chapter 6 and verse 6. If we could be able to comprehend the true meaning of Revelation 6, verse 6, it seems that the entire book of Revelation, which is the complete unfoldment of the plan of redemption, is completely revealed in that main subject, Revelation 6, verse 6. And I would like to continue to SR 234. It says, why not 5? Why is it that Jesus Christ uses only 2 kinds of cereals? Barley and wheat. Then it says, why not 5? And also we can question, why is it that B.T. Hotep used 5 instead of 6 or 7? It did not say, why not 6? It did not say, why not 5? Or why not 7 rather? It did not say, why not 7? But rather it says, why not 5? So there must be an accurate significance. And we already explained that number 5 is the number of the Bible. Number 5 is the number of the Bible. Now, since we already explained, brothers and sisters, that Revelation 6, verse 6 is signifying the Bible itself, then in this instance, we can easily understand that these 2 grains must also represent the Bible. Brothers and sisters, these two grains must also represented by the Bible, the Old and the New Testament. Now, then it says, the two cereals are sufficient to illustrate the thought and to clear the lesson. But the chief reason for only two is to draw attention to the first and last calls. So, the main reason, the principal reason why God uses only two kinds of cereals is to draw our attention on the parable on Matthew 20 to the first and the last call. Then it says, because reference is made of but two Israels, namely Israel after the flesh, the descendants of Abraham, and Israel after the Spirit, the 144,000. But the object of the lesson is for the latter, who are hired at the 11th hour. For the truth of the parable has never been understood by any other company. We already explained yesterday that without any doubts, the church mentioned in 2SR 237 that the reason why Jesus Christ followed that particular rule, 3-hour schedule, is to present to his church the exact time of her history by periods. Without any doubts, the church mentioned there is the church called at the 11th hour. Because according to this reading in 2SR 234, the truth of the parable has never been understood by any other company except the 11th hour call. You and I, if we will be faithful. And I do fully believe, brothers and sisters, that one of the strongest proof that we are that people, as stated in 1TG number 37 on page 11, it says, 1TG 37, page 11, those who are fortunate enough to have this revelation brought to them are the people. There is no other safe conclusion if God causes the prophecies to be written, sealed, and then unsealed at His will and at the time appointed. 1TG 37, page 11. So, if this particular object in view in the parable in Matthew 20 will be revealed unto us, then there is no other safe conclusion to conclude that we are that people, because there is no reason for God to reveal it unto us if we are not that people. And that is the fulfillment of that promise that Jesus Christ will present to His church the truth concerning the parable in Matthew 20, so that they will know the exact time of her history by periods. Now, I would like to read White House Recruiter. Let us read. On page 12. White House Recruiter, pages 12 and 13. It says, the issue is of greatest gravity. Christ foreknow it would be, and in supreme concern, he projected it in the crowning lesson of his parable of the vineyard. Now that the time has come to the last parabolic hour, he has set the parable ablaze with light. To be progressive as truth itself is. Let us look deeper into the parable now while the light of God is shining on it. So let us look deeper into the parable while it is still provisionary time. Now let us read again the statement on 2SR 225. So I'd like to read again the statement. It says, 2SR 225. It says, therefore, the vineyard is the world, and those sent to labor in it are the church. The parable cannot refer to one literal day of 12 hours, into which God has made 5 calls for laborers in the vineyard world. For there is no record where God raised 5 church organizations in one day and had them operating all at the same time. Therefore, the calls in the parable must extend over a period of world history in connection with the church. And that period, Jesus allegorically compares to 12-hour day, into which he hired laborers on 5 different occasions. So the statement says, 12-hour day, into which he hired laborers on 5 different occasions. Although, we already explained yesterday that the 5 different occasions is pointing to 5 different holy feasts. The first call, the Jewish church, Israel after the flesh going out of Egypt. That is, brothers and sisters, on the Passover feast. The second call, the apostolic church at the 3rd hour. That is on the day of Pentecost, by which Pentecost arrived on the 3rd hour. The third call, the Millerites movement, that is on the Feast of the Trumpet, the message of the midnight cry, to announce that the high priest is about to enter into the most holy place. And the Seventh-day Adventist Church, according to 1 SRK 74, it was called on the Day of Atonement. Obviously, therefore, the last and the fifth call must be on the Week of Tabernacles, or we call it the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, I would like to read again White House Recruiter. Remember, the Shepherd's Rod admonished us to study the parable in Matthew 20 in more deeper. So we need to study it deeper, brothers and sisters. So I would like to read again White House Recruiter, page 13. How can we know for a certainty in which hour we find ourselves? And if our own call to service has come? We can know only by establishing the time in which the last parabolic hours expires. So when does the last parabolic hour expire? In Matthew 20. On its strictest sense, on its direct application. Now, who are they that had been given the reward in the parable in Matthew 20? Who are they that had been granted 1 penny according to the parable? So, since the Shepherd's Rod admonished us that in order for us to firmly establish the exact time of the 11th hour, we need to establish firmly when does the 11th hour expires. Now first, according to the Bible, in Revelation 20 verse 8, it says, so when even was come, so in other translation, they use the term even sunset. So it says, so when even was come, the Lord of the vineyard said unto his steward, call the laborers and give them their hire, beginning from the last unto the first. Of course, I will no longer read the statement saying that the reward must be granted after we finish our work. And that is according to the parable. So we need to understand what is our work. The Shepherd's Rod says in 1 TG, I would like to read that reading. In 1 TG number 50, page 30, it is best to learn what God wants you to do. Then do just that. Life truly is just what we make it. no less and no more. Do not do the things which God did not command us to do. But we should not fail to do the things by which God commanded us to do. So, what is our work? Brothers and sisters. And who are they? The very first one to be granted 1 penny. And what is 1 penny? Remember the statement in 2SR 226 that if the explanation perfectly fits the parable, so the parable declared clearly that it was at even when God granted them 1 penny as the reward of their labor. So we need now to establish clearly, when does that parabolical even, by which the parables in Matthew 20, the 11th hour expires. We are talking about the 11th hour in Matthew 20. It did expire on that parabolical time called even, according to the Bible. Now, I would like to read White House Recruiter. White House Recruiter, page 38 and page 39. It says, to safeguard from corruption his jewels, Malachi 3 verse 17. And I do fully believe that the jewels mentioned here on its direct application is the living saints. To safeguard from corruption his jewels, in Malachi 3 verse 17, while making them up, he sets them in a house white and clean, apart from the counterfeit ones, the hypocrites. Who are they, the hypocrites? It says, apart from the counterfeit ones. Who are the counterfeit ones? The hypocrites. Who are they, the hypocrites? The heads of the beast. Now, I would like to read to us so that we could understand. Who are they? The hypocrites. It says here, in 2SR 101, 2SR page 101, the Lord of that servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour that he is not aware of, and shall cut him asunder, and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites, with the heads of the beast. It was inscribed in plural form. With the heads of the beast, there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Matthew 24, verse 45 to 51. And maybe there is a thing by which it might be, or not familiar among the media, I would like to read first one symbolic code number 10, page 9. One symbolic code number 10, page 9. So let us read. It says, the destruction of the Daniel 7 beast, though it is literal destruction, is not specifically of persons, but rather of principles, as is evidenced by the fact that the other three beasts of Daniel 7, which are recapitulated in the two composite beasts of Revelation 13 and 17, progressive symbols of our present world, continue to the end. Whereas the woman, the principle of false religion, has tried the beast. Revelation 17 is destroyed at the close of human provision, and reveals the same thing that the Daniel 7 beast symbol prophecies, namely the dissolution of the principle of false religion as expressed through the institution of the religio politicization. But I would like to focus to the statement, two composite beasts. I do fully believe that the only composite beast is the leopard-like beast. Brothers and sisters. But in this reading, there are two composite beasts. The composite beast on Revelation 13 and the composite beast on Revelation chapter 17. Because we are looking the angle by which the hypocrites represents the heads of the beast inscribed in plural form. 2SR page 101. Now let us go back again, brothers and sisters. The statement here given by the Voice of Inspiration. White House Recruiter on page 38 and page 39. It says, to safeguard from corruption his jewels, Malachi 3:17, while making them up, he sets them in a house white and clean, apart from the counterfeit ones, the hypocrites. Who are they, the counterfeit ones? The hypocrites. Who are they, the hypocrites? The heads of the beast. 2SR 101. So, this one is apart, meaning they were not belong to that hypocrites. According to the Voice of Inspiration. Then it says, this he does as the parabolical day draws to its close. And I do fully believe that this statement is more applied in this year, 2020, rather than in the days of B.T. Hutton. This he does as the parabolical day draws to its close. You finished? You remember the blank there? You need to place period of typical audition and antitypical audition. We have that diagram. Now, I would like to read. It says, consequently, and let me see again. You see that? 500 First 540 days. So you need to place here. From here, you count 540. From here, you can't, so you need to place the date, the exact date. Now, let's read. It says, consequently, the 11th hour servants are the first to receive their reward, the penny. So that is very plain in this reading. Who are they that receive the reward, 1 penny? The 11th hour servants. And of course, in the parable, that is after they finish their work. Brothers and sisters. And absolutely, logically, whoever that servant, they knew their work. How could they work if they did not know their work? And they were the first one who received the reward. What is that reward? 1 penny. Now, there's another statement in 2SR. It says here, 235. Why were the first paid last, and the last first? Answer. The pay of God's servants receive is eternal life and is characterized by the penny. So what is the penny? Eternal life. Therefore, those who are granted the assurance of a never-ending life first are those who were hard last. And according to the parable, it was the company called at the 11th hour. They are those who are marked or sealed by the man with the writer's inkhorn of Ezekiel 9, or John calls him the angel with the seal of God, and he sealed or marked 144,000. This glorious company is the first who are granted the assurance of never tasting death. Thus they are paid first. But those who were called early in the morning, Israel, after the flesh, are to be resurrected, the righteous, when Christ comes in the clouds, at which time they shall be given immortality. So that the last shall be first, and the first last. For this reason, those who were sealed and saved by the third angel's message since 1844 are resurrected in the spatial resurrection before Christ comes. Now, there are only 2 ways by which immortality will be granted: by translation and by resurrection. Now, I would like to read that statement in 1888 message. And it is very important to have a clear understanding, brothers and sisters, concerning such event. When does God's servants will be granted immortality? This statement is talking about the kingdom. So I would like to read. It says, Jesus said the saints will be rewarded at the resurrection of the just. Luke 14 verse 14. The resurrection of the just takes place when Christ himself returns to the earth. 1 Thessalonians 4 verse 15 to 17. At the coming of Christ, the saints inherit or enter into and possess the kingdom. Matthew 25 verse 31 to 34. And they cannot inherit it before the resurrection. For Paul says that flesh and blood, man in a mortal state, cannot inherit the kingdom of God. Neither that corruption inherit incorruption. 1 Corinthians 15 verse 50. Christ's kingdom is an everlasting kingdom which cannot be inherited by dying people. They must first be immortalized by the resurrection or at translation. God hath chosen the poor of this world, rich in faith, heirs of the kingdom which he hath promised to them that love him. James chapter 2 verse 5. They who are rich in faith and love God are now heirs of the kingdom, and they will inherit it when Jesus comes and redeems them from the bondage of corruption. Although we know that Sister White and Alonzo Jones, the only coming that familiar to them is the second visible coming of Jesus Christ. But the most important part that in that reading is that there are only two ways by which immortality will be granted: by translation and by resurrection. And we know that the very first to be resurrected is Daniel chapter 12. So let us now enumerate, brothers and sisters. So we know that the very first to be resurrected is Daniel chapter 12, verse 1 and verse 2. And who are they? Those who died from 1844 down to the last saint who will die. Or this is the sixth seal, or we called it the altar. I would like to read track number 5. Track number 5, page 110. It says, beginning from 109. Thus the temple, the first and the largest object, must represent the first and largest body of righteous dead. Those from Adam's time to the beginning of the judgment in 1844. While the altar, a special and a smaller object, must represent a special and smaller body of righteous dead, the righteous who died from 1844 on and who are to come up in the special resurrection. Daniel 12 verse 2, early writings, page 285. So that is very plain, brothers and sisters. Now, the altar in Matthew 20, they are the fourth call. They are the fourth call. And we know, according to the parable, of course, I would like to put it number 2. The very first one to be granted immortality is the fifth call. It was reversed from the last down to the first. Then number 3 is the third call. Then number 4 is the second call. And number 5 is the first call. The only way that the fourth call, the third call, the second call, and the first call, immortality will be granted to them by resurrection. It is only by resurrection. Then we can easily understood that before the fourth call, those who had been called at the 9th hour will be resurrected. The fifth call must be granted immortality first, because in the parable, they are the very first one that had been granted 1 penny. So immortality was granted to the fifth call before the fourth call had been resurrected, because if the granting of immortality of the fifth call is after the fourth call had been resurrected, then it is no longer in harmony with the parable in Matthew 20. Then we will be saying that it is the fourth call that had been granted 1 penny before the fifth call. Now, when does the fourth call will be resurrected? Daniel 12, verses 1 and 2. That is during provisionary time. So, I think it is familiar with all the Berean, right? But to establish such doctrine, let us read in 2TG, number 7. It says here, in 2TG number 7, page 14, I would like to read the last portion. That if the wise are from among the resurrected and turn many to righteousness, then they must be resurrected in provisionary time, in time of salvation. So when does Daniel 12 verse 1 and 2 will be resurrected? During provisionary time. So let us now analyze closely. So this is the special resurrection. Daniel 12 verse 2. That is the altar, represented by the sixth seal, and also represented by the fourth call, which is called at the 9th hour, by which the shepherds are declared clearly in 2SR 233, that is from 1844. From 1844 down to the last saint who died. They will be resurrected in special resurrection during provisionary time. During provisionary time. But when does the fifth call will be granted immortality? At even, according to Matthew 20, verse 8. What is even? Sunset. Therefore, sunset or even cannot be general clause of provision, because the fifth call were granted 1 penny, which is represented by everlasting life or immortality, prior to the time when the fourth call will be resurrected, by which such resurrection is granting them immortality. Therefore, the event mentioned here, or sunset, cannot be the general clause of provision, because the fourth call, the altar, those who died under the sixth seal, the 9th hour call, they will be resurrected during provisionary time. And at the time when immortality was granted to the altar, to the fourth call, the 9th hour call, it was first granted to the fifth call. Immortality was first granted to them before it will be granted to the fourth call, the third call, the second call, and the first call. So now, we already established the absolute fact that the expiration of the parable in Matthew 20, the 11th hour expires during provisionary time. The direct application of Matthew chapter 20. During provisionary time, but it must be, since it is even or sunset, then it is close of provision to the spiritual Israel. Brothers and sisters. So, we can't easily understand that the work that had been given to them is to preach to many nations, pointing to the 144,000 living saints. Then, by such token of logic, the direct application of Matthew 20, brothers and sisters, must be pointing first to the first of the first fruits. Now, I would like to read 2TG 43. On page 11. 2TG number 43, page 11. It says here, moreover, since the announcement of the separation of the saints from the sinners originates with the 11th hour servants, and since they are to cry aloud and say, awake, awake, put on the strength of Zion, put on the beautiful garments of Jerusalem, who are they? By such message address, awake, awake, put on the strength of Zion. Now, let us read first the Old Symbolic Code. Old Symbolic Code. It says here, 2 Symbolic Code, number 9, page 9. 2 Symbolic Code, number 9, page 9. It says, here's this statement. The above paragraph proves that upon Mount Zion lived the king, and in Jerusalem lived the rulers and the representatives of the nation. Therefore, the call in the antitype, Isaiah 52:1, so the same we read in 2TG 43:11. Therefore, the call in the antitype, Isaiah 52 verse 1, awake, awake, put on the strength of Zion, put on the beautiful garments of Jerusalem, is to the 144,000. To Symbolic Code number 9, page 9. So, unto whom such message is addressed? To the 144,000. Now, it cannot be understood that the 144,000 are crying to themselves. Therefore, there is no escaping the conclusion that the 11th hour servants mentioned here in 2TG 43:11, they are the first of the first fruits. Or it is called the Lord's arm. And then in page 12 it says, it follows that without the 11th hour message and servants, the church Zion would be left sleeping forever, never to behold the feet of him who brings these good tidings, of him who publishes peace, and never to put on her beautiful garments, never to be fitted for the kingdom. 1TG 43, 2TG 43, page 11 and 12. So that statement, without the 11th-hour servants, the 144,000 would be left sleeping forever. In reality, brothers and sisters, it is not a big deal for me. It is not a big deal. Whether the first of the first fruits, their number is counted as a part of the 144,000 or not. In reality, it's not a big deal. The important is the period of time. That the only hope of the first fruits, 144,000, is the 11th-hour servants. The first of the first fruits. Because without the 11th-hour message and servants, the church would be left sleeping forever and never to be fitted for the kingdom, according to the voice of inspiration. So, we need not to study closely, brothers and sisters. In the old symbolic code, let us read the statement. Old symbolic code on 9 symbolic code 1 to 12, page 7. A 9 symbolic code 1 to 12, page 7. It says, "Let us all, as a Davidian band, remember that we are called to the high office of conservators of the gospel, restorers of the old paths, repairers of the breach. We are called as the first of the first fruits from Laodicea, and thus we are to serve as saviors to Laodicea and saviors of Laodicea." So it says, we are called as the first of the first fruits from Laodicea. Brothers and sisters, the preposition from, meaning they originated from Laodicea, but they were no longer a part of the Laodiceans. Brothers and sisters, because the word from is to depart. The same with Matthew 1, verse 21. Jesus Christ will save His people from their sins. And in Testimonies for the Church, volume 4, 251, it says, Jesus did not say that He will save His people in their sins, but rather from their sins, meaning they departed from their sins. So the word from indicates departure. You cannot say, I came from America, if at the time you are saying you are still in the United States of America. Grammatically incorrect. So, the time by which you will say, I came from America, indicates that you were no longer in the United States of America. Now, let us go back to our subject, brothers and sisters. There's another statement in 1TG, number 42, page 8. It says, the word behold suggests that we should now take notice and be able to see that our salvation cometh, and that while His reward is with Him, His work is still before Him. What is His reward? What else could it be but life forevermore? So it shall be that the first fruits, the 144,000, the servants of God who are soon to stand on Mount Zion with the Lamb, shall be the first to be rewarded. As servants of God, they shall carry on the work that is before Him, the work of gathering the second fruits as set forth by Isaiah the prophet. You see, at the time by which they had been granted immortality, life forevermore, it says that the work is still before Him, meaning the gathering of the second fruits did not as yet begins. 1 TG 42, page 8. So, we already established the absolute fact that the 11th hour expires at the time when the 144,000 living saints were granted immortality. I think I will no longer elaborate more, brothers and sisters, concerning we as the first of the first fruits. What is our great duty to perform in connection with the judgment, according to 2SR 171? We already explained it several times. God commanded us to pray for the saints. So, there is a distinction now concerning the work of the 144,000. Although both of them, at that time, they will be rewarded the same period of time. But the work of the 144,000, brothers and sisters, of course, they continually sighing and crying for all the abominations. That is the saints. For all the abominations. I would like to use the term. They were sighing and crying for all the abominations known unto them. But the first of the first fruits, brothers and sisters, although they were also sighing and crying, but the most important part of their duty is to pray for these saints. These saints who are crying, sighing and crying. We need to pray for them. It is called prayer for the saints. Whose saints? The saints who are sighing and crying. We need to pray for them that their names will not be blotted out. And for sure, 100%, our prayers will be granted by God. Their names will not be blotted out. Because at the time when the blotting out of names will be fulfilled, there are 144,000 living saints. Their names retained in the Lamb's Book of Life. It was retained because of our prayers. They received the reward because they performed their work, sighing and crying. Although they themselves, they did not know in reality the actual proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. But God revealed to the first of the first fruits because they have a great duty to perform, the same with the poor beast. What is the poor beast and the 24 elders in the heavenly sanctuary? What is their duty? To present the prayers of all the dead saints. And that is the reason that they were the representatives in the heavenly sanctuary. But we have also great duty to perform to our fellow living saints. Because these faithful ones, they were sighing and crying. But they have no knowledge concerning the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. And that is why we are commanded by God to pray for them. And it's called prayers for the saints. Now, that is our great duty to perform, my dear brothers and sisters. Now, let us focus our attention to the most important part in our study. And that is concerning the exact time of history by periods. Now, remember, let us go back again to White House Recruiter. White House Recruiter on page 15. Let us read again. White House Recruiter, page 15. The truth is now become clear that the parable divides the time of salvation into two equal parts of 12 symbolical hours each. The period before the Bible, the night, and the period during the Bible, the day, lending additional force to the fact that the parable thus divides time, Jesus declares, are there not 12 hours in the day? If any man work during the day, he stumbleth not, because he seeth the light of this world. John 11, verse 9. Now let us look at first the groundwork, so that we could easily comprehend the particular object in view. What is the particular object in view? Concerning the parable by which divides the time of salvation into two equal parts. Remember, brothers and sisters, the words of inspiration is accurately constructed. In track number 15, on page 78, it says, from the aforementioned examples, we already see that the time has come for all faithful students after saving truth to realize that inspiration never does anything vain or careless. Its work is ever accurately constructed, always dependable at face value, and explicit beyond improvement. So when the words of inspiration says two equal parts, it must be equal. And we know that the word equal, the same. Absolutely the same. Brothers and sisters, if the other is 4, the other also must be 4. Because if it is 4 and 5, no, that is not equal. 5 is greater than 4, and 4 is less than 5. It is not equal. And secondly, we need to ever remember that whatever the particular object in view, in the parable in Matthew 20, it has never been understood by any other company except to the 11th hour call. Why? Because Jesus Christ did not present to them. The same with the statement in 1 SR page 13. The only answer that we can give is because it was not present truth in their time. Now, if we could be able to understand the entire truth, not only in the parable in Matthew 20, but the entire Bible, because it is attached to Revelation 6 verse 6, which indicates the 66 books of the Bible. So if the entire plan of redemption is completely unfolded at this time, then the only conclusion admissible is that Jesus Christ already presented to us the particular object in view. But let us look at first the groundwork. What is represented by the night in the groundwork? That is the time, according to 2SR 226. So let us read. 2SR page 226. It says, 2SR 226. I would like to read the last part. Why is it called early in the morning? At that time, Moses was writing the Bible, which is the light of the world. Therefore, very early, for the scripture had just begun to be written. Thus, the period since the Bible came is called the day, according to the parable, which signifies that the written word of God is the light of the world. So according to the Shepherd's Rod, also in White House Recruiter, the night represents the time before the Bible was written. Right? Now let us read here. In White House Recruiter. So that is the time before the Bible was written. In page 14, it says, let us read. To gain this vital knowledge is simply to reckon with the sequential amplifying facts. White House Recruiter, page 14. That the parabolical night, which preceded the parabolical day, must necessarily be the period before the spiritual light of the Word, the Bible, came up. Before the light of the Scriptures, the written Word of God began to shine forth into the hearts of men. For back there, it must be remembered, the will of God was transmitted not by the Bible, but orally from father to son, just as the light of the sun at night is transmitted to the earth by the moon, rather than directly by the sun itself. For this reason, it has come to be regarded as the time of oral tradition. White House Recruiter, page 14. Now let us analyze closely and take a deeper look, brothers and sisters. I would like to read first Mount of Blessings, page 40. It says, humanity, let me see that statement. In Mount of Blessings, on page 40. Humanity has in itself no light. Apart from Christ, we are like an unkindled taper, like the moon when her face is turned away from the sun. We have not a single ray of brightness to shed into the darkness of the world. So, humanity is compared to a moon. So, the small prophecy is plainly telling us, and also scientifically, the moon has no light of itself. The light of the moon is derived from the sun. So that is very plain, brothers and sisters. The light of the moon is derived only from the sun. The light of the sun is reflected to the moon. And that is the reason why the moon began to light up. Now, we already read in the great controversy accordingly that during the first 2,500 years, there was no written revelation. That is very plain in the great controversy introduction on page 7. During the first 2,500 years of human history, there was no written revelation. Those who had been taught of God communicated their knowledge to others, and it was handed down from father to son through successive generations. The preparation of the written word began in the time of Moses. Inspired revelations were then embodied in an inspired book. This work continued during the long period of 1,600 years. You see, 1,600 years from Moses to the historian of creation. From Moses, the historian of creation and the law, to John the recorder of the most sublime truths of the gospel. I think that statement is not difficult to understand. And we already proved that creation began in 4000 BC, track 1539. You can see that drawing, and at the bottom there is 4000 BC. And B.T. Hotep says that is the beginning of creation. Therefore, 4000 BC, brothers and sisters, 2,500 years, there was no written revelation. That is very plain in our reading. There was no written revelation. And, of course, 4,000 minus 2,500, that is 1,500 BC or 1,500 BC. And it says, the Bible was completely written 1,600 years, according to that statement in the Great Controversy. Therefore, the Bible was finished on 100 AD. So, 1500 plus 100 AD, that is 1,600 years. But as far as the shepherd's rod is thus concerned, brothers and sisters, Moses began to write the Bible at the age of 66. That is why in 1 SR 248 it says, the Bible is Moses. Now, it's easy to discern. 1491 BC, Moses at that time was 80 years old. Brothers and sisters. So, we need just to add 1491 plus 1491 BC plus 1491 plus 80, then you will have 1571 BC. 1571 BC. So this is the birth of Moses. Then 1571 BC minus 66 equals 1505 BC. 1505 BC. Therefore, Moses began to write the Bible 1505 BC. And that is the book of Genesis. Therefore, 1505 BC to 1500 BC, the Genesis was already in existence. Now remember, brothers and sisters, without the Genesis, the record of the Genesis, 50 chapters, we will never know what happened from creation down to the succeeding generation. Therefore, we can easily discern that from 4000 BC to 1505 BC, thus the moon, brothers and sisters, did not as yet reflected to the sun. Who is the moon? Represented by humanity. Represented by humanity. According to Mount of Blessings, page 40. Not until the sun, which is the spiritual sun, which is the Bible, which is the book of Genesis, that is the time that the history began to light up. So the time by which, brothers and sisters, the moon began to light up is in 1505 BC to 15 BC. For 5 years. That is the time by which the moon is shining. Because without this record, Genesis, we will never know what happened from 4000 BC downward in its succeeding generation. Only in the book of Genesis, we know the history from creation. And Genesis is a part of the Bible. And the Bible is the spiritual sun. According to the shepherd's rod. Now, would you think it is just a mere happenstance? The first book of the Bible was written within 5 years. Number 5 is the number of the Bible. And the last book of the New Testament from 96 AD to 100 AD, that is 5 years. Would you think it is just a mere happenstance? The first book and the last writer of the Bible, also 5 years consumed to finish all his epistles from Revelation, John, 1 John, 2 John, and 3 John. No, it is purposive design, brothers and sisters. Now, let us move forward, brothers and sisters, to our study. Therefore, concerning the sunrise, it must be the Exodus. Even in the chart of B.T. Hotep, let us look at Matthew 20. If you will look at, that is sunrise, right? And you can see Exodus, not Genesis. Brothers and sisters, because Genesis, the moon, the sun lighted the moon, or the moon, the light of the sun reflected to the moon. That is the book of Genesis. my dear brothers and sisters. Now, let us now continue to our subject. Now, since the shepherd's rod and since the spirit prophecy is in perfect harmony, it says that the Bible, which is the spiritual son, it was written 1,600 years from 1500 BC to 100 AD. 1500 plus 100 equals 1,600 years. Now, ponder deeply, brothers and sisters. Therefore, we can easily discern. I would like to put here 4,000 BC. So this is the night. But the moon did not light up not until 1505 BC. Because the moon, represented by the historical event, can never shine not until the book of Genesis was written. Because in this period of time, there was no written revelation. Not until in 1505 BC. Therefore, here in 5 years, that is the time by which the moon is shining. The moon was already in existence in 4000 BC. Brothers and sisters, which is represent humanity. But before the moon, brothers and sisters, reflect to the sun, which represent by humanity, during that time, since there was light, the light, brothers and sisters, that reflect to the humanity could not be the light from the sun. Could not be the light from the spiritual sun. The same with the first 4 days. Now let us read first the shepherd's rod. Let us go to answerer. Answerer number 3 on page 8. The light which shone on the first day, and by which God divided the day from the night, it says, set the earth revolving on its axis, was not, however, that of the sun, for the sun and the moon were not created until the 4th day, when he spoke them forth to rule over the day and over the night. Genesis 1 verse 18, which he had beforehand established. Now, let us distinctly separate the first 4 days, by which in the first 4 days, there was already night and day. But, brothers and sisters, the light on the daylight, it was not derived from the sun. Because the sun was not yet created at that time. The light during nighttime does not derive from the moon, because the moon at that time was not yet created. So to study Matthew 20, we need to study closely the significance of the period of time by which the light that had been given or bestowed to God's people in the period represented by daylight was not taken from the spiritual sun. And the light that was taken during nighttime is not from the moon. So, in the first 4 days, even the sun and the moon were not yet in existence. There was already light during daytime, and there was already light during nighttime. Now let us continue reading here in the next paragraph. It says, thus it was that whereas the earth began punctuating eternal time with the first night of creation week, from which the weekly seventh-day Sabbath is measured. The moon began punctuating time at the end of the third day and at the beginning of the fourth night, from which the month is measured. When does the moon began punctuating? Brothers and sisters, that is at the end of the third day. When does the third day will end? On sunset. But it says, it is the beginning of the fourth night. So that is the time when the moon began to punctuate. The beginning of the fourth night, from which the month is measured. And the sun began to punctuate time at the end of the fourth night, and the beginning of the fourth day, from which the year is measured. Now, I would like to show to you a little diagram. So, we have a diagram so that we could easily comprehend. So, this is the first night, Sunday. Then, the second night, Monday. Then we have the third night, in Tuesday. Then, the fourth night, that is on Wednesday. So here, brothers and sisters, this is at 6 p.m., the moon began to punctuate according to the shepherd's rod. Answerer number 3, page 8. At the fourth night from creation. But the word punctuate here cannot be understood that the moon began to light. Brothers and sisters, because the sun began to punctuate I think it's not complete. At the fourth day at 6 p.m., at 6 a.m., the sun began to punctuate at the end of the fourth night. I would like to repeat again. The word punctuate, brothers and sisters, cannot be understood that the moon began to light. How could the moon began to light if her light is derived from the sun, while the sun began to punctuate at the end of the fourth night, whereas the moon began to punctuate at the beginning of the fourth night. So there are 12 hours apart from the time the moon began to punctuate to the time when the sun began to punctuate. Brothers and sisters, the sun does not rotate, but the moon rotates the same as the earth. the term punctuate to the sun is only to give light. So, the statement, the moon began to punctuate at the beginning of the fortnight cannot be construed that the moon began to light up at the beginning of the fortnight if her light is derived from the sun, because the sun did not begin to punctuate not until the end of the fortnight. That is the time by which the sun began to punctuate according to the shepherd's rod. Now, we would like to show to you, brothers and sisters, to this diagram. So here, according to the shepherd's rod, from 4000 BC to 1500 BC, that is the night time. From 1500 BC to 100 AD, that is, let us place here 2500. 2500, then this one is 1600. So this one is 2500 years. This one is 1600 years. Therefore, it cannot be applied, that statement in White House Recruiter, page 15. Divide to equal parts. The night time and the daytime are equal. And there is no other by which the night time and the daytime are equal except vernal equinox. But this is not literal vernal equinox. It is symbolical vernal equinox, by which that is the application of the parable in Matthew 20. Brothers and sisters, by which the time of salvation is divided into two equal parts. White House Recruiter, page 15. 12 hours in the night time, 12 hours on the daylight. It is called vernal equinox. Only the term vernal equinox, accordingly, that is the day by which the night and the day are equal. Now, so this is, we'll explain it later. This is the parabolical autumn. Now, here, from 100 AD to 1530 AD, this is also called the night. The night time, right, brothers and sisters? Then from 1530 AD to 1844, that is the daylight. Now, I would like to read to you that it was in the day of Martin Luther by which the Bible began to light up. Brothers and sisters, it is in the days of Martin Luther. First, in 1SR page 109. 1SR page 109. So let's read. It says here, just so the beginning of the time of the duplicate or antitype must be marked with a time of low spiritual condition. In the time of Martin Luther, we have the exact reproduction of Abraham's experience. For in Luther's time, spiritual darkness and idolatry prevailed everywhere. So that is in Luther time, brothers and sisters, by which spiritual darkness. Now, here's in 216 and 217 in 1SR. 1SR 216 and 217. Why should inspiration notice the taking away or restoring the temporal power of the Pope rather than the reclaim of the Bible. You see, reclaim of the Bible. And the casting away of darkness. Had not God, by the hand of Luther, thrown asunder the doors of darkness and caused light to shine on His written word? So it says that, cause light to shine on His written word. So it was in the days of Martin Luther, by which, brothers and sisters, the written words began to shine again. 1 SR 216 and 217. I know it is a little bit dim subject, brothers and sisters. So let us go back again to our little diagram. So, because we are studying the parallelism with the 7 seals, 7 trumpets in the creation week. The same with the parable in Matthew 20. Because it was mentioned day and night. And we need to go back to creation. And it was also connected by the sharper's rod in the days of creation. Now, here, brothers and sisters, so from 100 AD, it is night time for the church, right? After the apostle died, what happened to the church? Spiritual darkness. I will no longer read, brothers and sisters, because there are many passages. But it was in 1530 AD, the Augsburg Confession, that is the time by which regarded as the Bible began to light up according to the shepherd's rod. But we need to focus our attention in October 22, 1844 onwards. Why? Brothers and sisters, from October 22, 1844, you can see here, it is spring, because we have autumn, winter, then spring. Of course, the last period is summer, which is closely connected to Jeremiah 8 verse 20. Jeremiah 8 verse 20. Now let us focus first to October 22, 1844. So, now, brothers and sisters, in the parable of Matthew 20, so it is time now that we connect Revelation 6 verse 6. Now, in the parable of Matthew 20, brothers and sisters, that is very plain. So whatever explanation, it must be perfectly fits the parable according to 2 SR 226. In the parable of Matthew 20, this is the arrangement, right? 2, 3, 4, 5. So, this is the first call. Who are they the first call? I would like to place third seal. But how about the second call? It is combination of third seal and the fourth seal. Brothers and sisters. I'm sorry. The second call is combination of the third seal and fourth seal. The second call is combination of third seal and fourth seal. Who are they, the third call? It is the fifth seal. Who are they, the fourth call? It is the sixth seal. Who are they, the fifth call? The worshippers. I would like to go directly worshippers, because if we will see seven seal, we might be confused. Because the seven seal is composed of worshippers and those outside the court. That is the great multitude. But in Matthew 20, only the worshippers is a part of Matthew 20. Now, brothers and sisters, the parable is very plain. That in the granting of rewards, the first to be rewarded is the worshippers. Reverse, right? Reverse order. Then, second is the sixth seal. Then, the third one is the fifth seal. And the fourth is the third seal and the fourth seal. And the last one is the third seal. But to understand it clearly, it is the last call, the fifth call, the fourth call, the third call, the second call, and the first call. When would be the third seal? Commence from 1921 BC, from the call of Abraham, down to Christ, 31 AD. Now, in 31 AD, there are many resurrected saints. Immortality was granted to them. Those that had been resurrected together with the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and those that had been resurrected after Christ's resurrection, there are two groups that had been granted immortality in 31 AD. Therefore, the parable cannot be applied 31 AD backward. If you will apply the parable 31 AD backward, then it is no longer in harmony with the parable of Jesus Christ, that the 144,000 is the first one to be granted one penny, which is immortality, while in reality, under the third seal, there are already many souls that had been granted immortality, not only third seal. Because according to early writings, those that had been resurrected at the resurrection of Jesus Christ, there were selected saints from creation down to Christ. So some of them are from first seal, some of them are from second seal, and some of them are from third seal. So there are already saints that had been resurrected. Immortality granted even before the time by which the 144,000 were in existence. But rather, brothers and sisters, the parable in Matthew 20, being connected to Revelation 6 verse 6, answers all the questions that the answer must be found in Revelation 6 verse 6. And if we could be able to understand Revelation 6 verse 6, that is the time by which, brothers and sisters, the parable in Matthew 20 is directly and definitely applied. And for sure, only the saints that will no longer to taste that will understood such parable. Why? Because Jesus Christ presented to them the truth of the parable at the time when the 144,000 living saints were already in existence, brothers and sisters. So we will continue this subject and we'll be focusing our attention from 1844 onwards. so that we could be able to ascertain clearly the exact period of history. And that is why I would like to read here in the Old Symbolic Code. Let's read Old Symbolic Code. For Symbolic Code 10 to 12, page 3. For Symbolic Code 10 to 12, page 3. Now our attention is called to the most important question. Could it be possible that the scriptures should contain such a complete prophecy of the church to 1844 and contain none at all for her since then? So the shepherd is saying that we can trace back from 4000 BC to 1844 a complete prophecy, unbroken line. Now, how about from 1844 onwards? It says, contain none at all for her since then, since 1844? No more complete prophecy? The answer is, it says, all must honestly agree that to leave the church out of prophecy at any time is illogical and also impossible, for God has never left His people in darkness, and He surely would not do so now at the most important time in the world's history. Then why does the church of today know so much about the prophecies of the past and so little of the prophecies concerning her own destiny? So our main objective in this study, the chronological order of events, is from 1844 down to the midnight deliverance of God's people, when the 144,000 will be delivered to Mount Zion, the premillennial kingdom. And 100%, there is a complete prophecy, complete history from 1844 up to the time of the deliverance of God's faithful people. So, and that chronological order of events is revealed in the 9 mediums employed by God, according to 1SR Pocket Edition on page 37. But at this time, we just focus to the parable. And according to the shepherd's rod, Revelation 6 verse 6 is sufficient enough. If we could be able to understand Revelation 6 verse 6, what is Revelation chapter 6 verse 6? The whole book, brothers and sisters. And what is the significance on Revelation 6 verse 6? That is the time by which God the Father Himself is speaking. According to the shepherd's rod, right? In 2SR 222. So, I would like to read 2SR page 222. It says, in our study of the 7 seals, we reserve for future explanation the following scripture. And I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 beasts say, a measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. Revelation 6 verse 6. Again, we turn the reader's attention to the fact that the voice came from the throne. See chapter 5 verse 11. Therefore, the price of the cereals is fixed by the great judge. There must be something of great importance in these symbols, for the great Jehovah Himself is speaking. 2SR 222. And we will continue that subject, brothers and sisters. And I know God would help us if we are only intensely interested to know the plan of redemption. Thank you very much for listening and viewing this program. May the good Lord bless you and have a beautiful, wonderful evening.